If you're sending out social media posts through any kind of marketing channels, you are going to love this video. I'm going to be breaking down for you how you can automate your social media posting using no-code tools. So without any kind of coding technology whatsoever, you're going to be able to stand up an easy solution to automate all of your social media posts by the end of this video. So if that's of interest, stick around and let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Gareth, and this is Gap Consulting. It's our mission to help you unlock the full potential of no-code tools. And in this video, we're going to be using a couple of our favorite no-code tools, namely Airtable and Zapier, and whatever social media platforms you might be using on the back end. Now, before we get into the heart of things, I first want to invite you to join me for some automation training. If you're kind of new to no-code in general, or if you've been using it for a while and you're ready to kind of level up, you know it can do more, well, I have broken down for you the basics of automation in my free training. You can grab that at gapconsulting.io/webinar-registration. Go ahead and sign up for free, and I will send that training to you immediately. But without further ado, let's go ahead and hop on into my screen, and I'm going to show you the breakdown of the database structure that we start with. Now, you can get more complicated than this, but this is kind of the minimum setup for social media posting, and here's what it looks like. First of all, I'm in Airtable, and I've built just one simple table here, and I've called it social media posts. Now, inside of that table, we're going to look at the different columns, and I'll tell you why each one of them is important. The first column is going to be the social post, and this is just a rich text or a long text field. Inside of this post or inside of this field, we're going to put together whatever verbiage we want to actually share in our post. So assuming that we have some sort of comment that we're adding to this post, that's where that goes. Now, the next one here is going to be our image, and this is a file type or an attachment. So inside of Airtable, we're able to attach different files in here. It can be a PNG, a JPEG, or it could be even a video or something like that. We're attaching that file in here, that attachment, and we're going to include it with our social media post. So this image will be shared. Now here I've just got an example of a blog post that we put out before so that we can see this in action. Next, I have my platform field, and here I've got a couple of options for us. Now, I've currently set this up to be a multiple select, but in full transparency, I prefer this to be a single select. Now, the reason behind this is if it's a single select, we can only pick one platform at a time. Meaning, if we're going to be sending this same post to multiple social media accounts, we effectively have to duplicate the post and then rearrange it so that it's going to a different one, a different social platform. Now, the value behind that, of course, is each social media platform has its own specifications. You know, Instagram images are going to be a different size than a LinkedIn image, for example. And so it's to our benefit to actually craft each post separately, even if it's the same message, but it's going out across different accounts. Well, it's still in our best interest to duplicate that. So in this way, I would actually set this to be a single select field, and I would list out the different platforms that we might be sending to. Now, in here, I've got it selected so that it will, once I save this, just be one, because I've set this now to a single select, and I'll be able to select which platform I want to submit this to. So in this case, it's going to LinkedIn. Now, my next field here is the link to share. Now, most of the time when we're doing social media marketing, especially for business, we're going to be sharing some clickable link that we want people to take action on. So when we put out a valuable post, maybe it's a blog post, maybe it's, a piece of content, we want to drive people back to our original source. So where are we driving that traffic? Now for us, I've just included my blog homepage, which I'm just going to use again for our example. Now, the next component here is going to be the date to publish. This is a date field, and note that I have also toggled on the time because we want to actually time our different posts. And I also want to include a display time zone. That way, if I'm working with a team across multiple time zones, everybody knows exactly what time we're talking about here. So my particular time zone is Mountain Time, and I've set this to publish. Let's actually update this to be more recent. My current time is 10:15, so I'm going to set this up to be 10:15. All right, now lastly, we have our post URL. After we've actually posted this to social media, we want our automation to come back and provide that URL for us here. That way, when we're looking back at our documentation over time, we can say, we sent out that post at this particular date time, and this is the post itself. Like, this is the actual evidence that thing got posted on social media. This is another reason I prefer to make this field over here a single select, because if we're sending it out to multiple different platforms, it's nice to instead just have one post or one link per platform. So these are the main components that we need. Now, the next piece that we need to add is going to be a formula. If you've never written a formula in Airtable before, this can feel a little daunting, but don't let that stop you. I'll provide all the key components for you here. I'm going to name this my trigger formula, and it's going to be a formula field type. Now, what I want to do is evaluate the time that we've said we want to publish that and consider how it relates to now, the current moment in time. Now, as I mentioned to you, my current time is approximately 10:15 in the morning. And so when I write this formula and compare it to now, I want to see a very small number saying that they're actually pretty close. So let's do that. I'm going to write a date time diff. What this is going to do, this particular function, is compare two times to each other, and it's going to output the difference between them in whatever unit we denote. So in our example, I'm going to say, I want you to look at the date to publish. That is the field we created right here that we're saying, hey, this is when we want to publish this thing. I want you to compare that value to the second value, which is called now. This is a function inside of Airtable, which is this actual moment in time. So if I just write this function right now and I say, take the date to publish, compare it to now, the current moment in time, and output the difference in minutes. This is the first step of our formula. Let's go ahead and save right here. And you're going to see that the difference in minutes is 0. That's because it's currently 10:15. Now, if I set this to be some other time, let's say 10:30 a.m., then you're going to see that this is 11 minutes off, or 15 minutes off rather, because my current time is 10:15, this time is 10:30, and so it's within 15 minutes. Now, a key takeaway for you here is that Airtable is going to calculate that function for now every few minutes or so. If you're not in your database, it's going to calculate that even less frequently. So I want to give this a window. It's not going to trigger off to the exact minute or the exact second. I want to give it a good 10-15 minute window. And so what I want to say is, hey, if the value here for the date to publish is within plus or minus 10, for example, that's what I want to use for my trigger. And so what we can do then is basically say in our automation trigger, if this value right here is less than 10, for example, and we don't already have a post URL in this field right here, meaning we haven't actually triggered our automation yet, that can be the conditions that trigger our automation. So let's take this in a practical example. We're going to build the automation trigger directly from Airtable. So inside of automations, our second panel, we're going to say when a record matches conditions. And the record, of course, is going to come from our social media posts table. When the time, that is the formula, the trigger formula that we've just built, when that is less than, and pick a number, in our case, it'll be less than 10, meaning that it's within 10 minutes of the actual trigger time. But we're also going to say that the URL here, the post URL, is empty. Now, the reason for that, again, is because we're saying we haven't actually posted it yet. So what this is saying in layman's terms is that it's nearing time to send this out, and we haven't sent it out yet. We haven't created a post for it yet. If that is true, then we're going to automate this. Now, when I choose a record here, it's going to take that record into the next step of my automation. I don't have a record because back in our database, we actually have a time here of 15 minutes because this is set 15 minutes from now. So let's rewind it a little bit. Let's set it to something like 10:20. That will cause our trigger formula to recalculate. It's now 5 minutes or less than 10, which is what we want. So back in our automation, if we do another search and choose a record, we're going to find a record meets these conditions. Perfect. Now, for the next step, now that we have a record meeting those conditions, we want to actually take the action of posting some stuff out. And so, how do we do that? Well, we set up an action step. Now, a lot of times we can build automation directly inside of Airtable. And you'll see that we have a lot of different third-party software that we can connect to. But social media is kind of lacking. We can get some Hootsuite, so we can schedule a post if you're using Hootsuite. We can also use Facebook pages. They're here. But if I want to post directly to LinkedIn or to Instagram or something like that, I can't do it directly from Airtable. But that's okay. We've got a workaround. So let me show you how this works. For us, I want to take this action only if it's a LinkedIn post, let's say. So first I'm going to set up some conditional logic inside of my Airtable automation. So it's saying, hey, the trigger has been triggered. The automation is saying, hey, there's a post that's ready to go out. Now let's do some conditional logic here. We can say, if it meets these conditions, then we're going to take action on LinkedIn. What is that condition? Well, back here in our base record, the record that triggered the automation, we're looking for the platform. If the platform is LinkedIn, then of course we want to take the next step and post it to LinkedIn. Cool. Now, I can't build the actual post inside of Airtable. So I need to go to a third-party software to do this. And for this, I'm going to choose Zapier. Let's plug into Zapier here, where I can create a new automation called a Zap. And Zapier is much more connected than Airtable in terms of automation. So here I can establish a different type of trigger. Let's, in our case, choose a webhook. So I'm going to go search for webhook here. And this requires a pro Zapier plan. If you are leaning into automation and using it to automate a lot of your business, this will be one of your favorite bills to pay because it's going to actually save you a ton of money. And inside of this, we get to set up our trigger event. We can do a catch hook, catch raw hook, a retrieve poll. I'm just going to do a standard catch hook here. And we're going to go configure it over here. And we don't need to pick off a child key. We can continue. And here, Zapier is going to give us a webhook. Now, all this is like a phone number that we're going to call when we're ready to perform our automation. Now, in order to call this phone number, we need to set up our action in Airtable. So let's plug back in over there. And the first thing we're going to do is add an action. Now our action here is going to be to run a script. This is going to require that you're on one of those Airtable paid plans. But again, this is one of my favorite bills to pay because at the end of the month, it saved me so much time. Automation, when you look at all that it's accomplishing for you in the background, is one of the easiest bills you will ever pay. So here we go into our little snip of code, and we're going to publish or copy and paste this simple code, which is basically saying we are going to send information to webhook, and we're going to let it know what our record ID is. Each record in Airtable has its own ID. It's kind of hidden to us unless we know how to look for it, but it's unique to each record, so we know all the information about that record. So first I need to get my webhook here. So I'm going to pop back into Zapier. I'm going to copy the webhook that Zapier provided for me, and I'm going to paste it in right here. So in this case, you've got that brand new webhook to Zapier. Now, after that, we need to include question mark, record ID. And this is case sensitive. However we name this, this is a variable that we are identifying. Record, capital I, capital D. I'm going to create an input variable with the exact same name, case sensitive and all. And I need to assign the value to it. In this case, the value is the Airtable record ID. Now, when I do this, when I perform this, I'm going to run a test here. All it's going to do is send a message to that webhook with my record ID. You don't have to know how to code. All you have to do is copy and paste this, and we will share this wherever you found this video. Now, I'm running a test, and you can see it's sending a message right now to Zapier. It's going to give me the thumbs up in just a second. There it is. It's saying, hey, I included the record ID and this is what it was. If I pop into Zapier now and I say test the trigger, it's going to say, hey, yeah, I did find some information. You guys just sent me something. And if I open it up, here is the record ID. Now that's what we need in order to perform the next step. I now have the record ID from Airtable. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to look up in Airtable for my next step and learn everything I can about that record. So I'm going to choose a new step here. I'm going to find a record in Airtable. Now Zapier is going to ask us to connect our account, and I have several here. I'm going to actually connect a new account so that I can sync up directly to that brand new database that we're working on. And that particular database is called Social Media Automation. Right here, I will grant access to that database, and we will now be synced up. So you can see here, I've got my connection established, and let's actually rename it so that we know in the future what this is. This is going to be Social Media Test. and we'll say OK. So now we're connected Zapier to Airtable. We have the ability to look up that information, and we can first say, hey, I want you to go into this database. And now I want you to look into this table. And here's where we're going to say what we're looking up. Well, we're looking up the record ID. That's the information that we have in our automation, but we don't actually display this yet in our table. Let's actually pop back into Airtable. Let's close down our automation that we were working on. And of course we can toggle this on when we're ready to actually go. But right now what I'm going to do is set up a new formula. I'm going to call this formula for rec ID. And this is a pretty simple formula. It's just record underscore ID, open close parentheses, create field. So this is the record ID that we passed to Zapier. Now inside of Zapier, I want to look up that very field. So first we need to refresh our connection, refresh our fields. Because when we build a new field in Airtable, we need to make sure we pull it into Zapier while we're testing this out. We're going to search by a field and we're going to find, we need to refresh these results here too. And let's scroll down, formula for record ID. This is the record ID inside of this social media posts table. And we have that value because we received it in our webhook when we made that phone call to the webhook. So let's go ahead and plug it in here. We just look at our catch hook and we're plugging in that record ID. Now we will always have an exact match because the record ID is what we passed from Airtable. We do not want to create a new Airtable record. No, we only want to find a record that exists. Let's go ahead and continue and test the step. Now, when we bring this back, you're going to see everything there is to know about that record, including the URL for everything that we've produced there, the image, the social media content, everything, right? All of the different components that we've put together on that post. Next, we're going to send this data, organize it to LinkedIn. So in this case, I'm just going to look up whatever platform we're using. And so you can see there's actually a lot of functionality in Zapier. I can do ads, I can do conversions, all kinds of fancy things. But for us, standard LinkedIn post, let's go LinkedIn. What action are we doing? We're going to create a share update. So let's do it right here. We have to make sure we're connected to our account and continue. And here, this is different for every social media platform. Exactly what we need to bring in here is going to be different every time. For us, we need the comment in LinkedIn, and we can map it from the data that we found in Airtable. So we had a field that we called social media comment or something along those lines. Let's find it. Here it is, fields social post. So this is where we actually wrote the text. Now we can optionally add a title, a description, an image. And so of course we do have an image. Let's find our image here, and I'll just search for image. And here we have a lot of different options because we get a lot of data from Airtable. I'm going to use the full image URL. So this is called image thumbnails full URL. We'll test this out. If it doesn't work, we might have to come back and remap it. And then also our content URL. What are we sharing for people when they click on this? Where do we want to drive them? Well, that lived back here as well. I can click on find record and I'm going to search for the link to share. That was the name of the field that we created where we're sharing this link with the post. So let's continue and let's test this step. This is actually posting something live to my LinkedIn. So let's quickly flip into my LinkedIn now. And on another window, you see that we've just posted this. Here's the message. Here's a social media post done entirely via automation with this image. And if we click on it, where is it going to take us? Well, it should take us to our actual blog because that is the exact link that we shared inside of our content. So as you can see, everything worked perfectly and it is all set up on our LinkedIn. Now, because this is just an example, I'm going to delete this post. Sorry to any of my followers who just saw that come up as spam, but there you go. Now, we're not entirely done. The last step is actually to take this URL and plug it back into Airtable so we have a record of where we shared this, right? So as a final step, we're going to go back here into Airtable. We're going to update it with the information we just got. So let's go for update a record. And we're going to continue here. And in our base, social media automation, in our social media posts table, From there, we're going to choose the record, and we already have the record ID from the previous steps. Now, here you can see that this is static. We want to make sure that we're plugging it in dynamically. If it's static, it's going to do the same one every time. Dynamic is going to change every time the automation iterates. So in order to get to that, we're going to click on the three dots, going to go to custom. And here we can say, we can either use the record ID in step 2, we can use the record ID in step 1. It's all the same record ID because we've only used one record through our automation. So let's plug in one of those record IDs. And the only piece we need to update is that output, right? The post URL. This is where we shared it. So let's go ahead and plug it in. We're going to grab it from the third step. This is where we got the output. This is the URL for that post. Let's continue. Let's test the step. Test the step every step of the way when you're building an automation. Name this automation and publish it. But if we go back into Airtable now, we're going to see that we have a URL shared right here. If I click on it, I'll be taken directly to this post. Of course, I've just deleted this post, so it no longer exists. But if it was still around, I'd be taken right to it. Those are the components to social media automation. As you saw, we set it up so that we could filter down to a particular platform, follow a specific automation process for that platform, share the information we've customized for, in this case, LinkedIn, and then bring back the social media post to our system. I know we went really quickly in this video. Obviously, this is a complicated topic, but if you break it down to the bare elements, I know that you can build this for yourself in your business. If you have any questions, feel free to swing by our website, get the help you need. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, but most importantly, keep on building.